We've now seen an example of the very simple button element. Now we're going to go through the same process with a touchable opacity. Touchable opacity works slightly differently, but chances are you're going to end up using touchable opacity in a lot of your applications more frequently than you're going to use a button. So let's give this a shot. I'll flip back over to my home screen component, and at the top I'm going to add in an import for touchable opacity from React Native as well. Then right after my button, I'm going to place a touchable opacity. A touchable opacity is not a self-closing element, so notice how I put down an opening and a closing tab. Then inside of here, we're going to add in some number of elements. Whenever a user taps on any of the elements inside of here, the touchable opacity will detect that tap and give us some kind of notification in the form of a onPress event, just like the one we assigned to button right there. So in this case, I'm going to add in a text element inside of the touchable opacity. I'll then give it some text like about, what do we show in our mockup back over here? Go to list demo. Let's do that. Go to list demo. Okay, so let's save this as is and see what happens. So I can now see that text up here in my application. Notice how by default, that text gets no styling. So that's one benefit to using the button element. The button element by default has some nice styling tied to it. If I now tap on that text, you'll notice that it kind of fades out very briefly and then comes back in. That behavior is added in by the touchable opacity. The word opacity inside there indicates that whenever you tap on an element that is listed inside of touchable opacity, it's going to very briefly kind of fade out. The idea there is that it's going to give some feedback to our users and let them know that, hey, you just tapped on like that thing right there. This automatic kind of fade effect is going to work on any kind of element that we put inside of a touchable opacity. So if we also put in, say, some kind of image or an icon, and then tapped on it, it would have a very similar fade out effect. So that's kind of a nice benefit to using the touchable opacity. We can show any kind of element inside of it, and if a user taps on it, they're going to get an immediate little piece of feedback. So now to detect a press event, we're going to assign an onPress prop, just like we did for our button, to the touchable opacity. So inside of touchable opacity on the opening tag, I'll say onPress. I'll then assign an arrow function. And I'll do a console log inside of here for right now as well. And for this one, I'll say list pressed, like so. So I'll save that. And now if I tap on that text and then flip back over to my terminal window, I'll see list pressed. Perfect. All right. So this is a very simple demonstration of some of the differences between button and touchable opacity. The big difference is that a button is going to essentially just show some pre-styled text inside of it, and that's pretty much it. The touchable opacity, on the other hand, is going to allow us to put in any kind of element we want inside of here. We could even put in multiple elements if we wanted to. So for example, if for some crazy reason we want to have like multiple pieces of text, those will all be displayed. Let me get my emulator back up here really quickly. There we go. All three pieces of text are displayed, and if I tap on any of them, that entire block of text is going to fade out. Now obviously, having like multiple pieces of text fade out or be pressable is not super useful, but you might imagine that maybe you want to have like a really big image that a user can press on, and maybe also have like a piece of text like a title underneath it. And whenever a user tapped on either the image or that piece of text, maybe we would want to respond to that. And the touchable opacity would be perfect for that. So right now, we're just kind of trying to get a better idea of how the touchable opacity works, but we're going to get some good examples of the power of it in some later applications that we put together. Okay, so now we've seen both our button and our touchable opacity. The last thing we have to do is figure out how to navigate a user over to the components demo or the list demo whenever they tap on it. So we'll figure out how to handle that navigation in the next video.